Next Friday, the Turnbull Government's energy plan will face a crucial hurdle. At a Council of Australian Governments meeting, it'll need to persuade the states to sign up to the National Energy Guarantee, designed to ensure reliable power and reduce Australia's carbon emissions. It'll be a hard ask to get the policy through, given that Labor states are saying those emissions cuts are too low, whereas some Conservative members of the government believe they're too high. The Minister responsible, Josh Frydenberg, joins me live tonight from Adelaide. Minister, given that not all your own federal colleagues will unite behind your national energy plan, why should the state governments?
Well, there is strong support within the Turnbull government for the National Energy Guarantee. My colleagues see it as the pathway to reducing people's power bills, to increasing the reliability of the system and staying true to our Paris commitments.
Not all your colleagues,
the real question for this... Well, there is very strong support among the party room for the National Energy Guarantee, and a lot of my colleagues have come out publicly in favour of it. Now, the real question for the Labor states is whether they are going to listen to the experts or whether they're going to cave in to groups like Get Up and the Greens.
But the problem
are they
for
going to deliver lower prices?
But the problem,
are they going to deliver
interrupt.
lower prices?
The problem for the states is that what you talk to them about next Friday, they can't be guaranteed is what's going to survive through the coalition party room the following week.
Leigh, we've always been consistent with the states, namely that what is being sought at that meeting is agreement to the detailed design of the National Energy Guarantee, which is the responsibility of the states and the Commonwealth through the COAG Energy Council. Then we would have a phone hookup after the legislation has been debated in the coalition party room, and subject to the states being satisfied at that point, then the exposure draft of the state legislation would be released for public comment. That is the process, but we have a detailed design from the Independent Energy Security Board, and it's up to the states to deliver lower prices rather than prolong investor uncertainty.
On another matter, the preservation of the Great Barrier Reef, why did you and Prime Minister Turnbull allocate more than $400 million to a Queensland foundation without any sort of tender process?
Well, we chose the most appropriate organisation to partner with to leverage off the private sector's philanthropic efforts. Now, this organisation, the foundation, has been around for nearly 2 decades. The Labor Party contributed to it when they were in office. They have raised around $80 million themselves, and they have some of Australia's most reputable and leading, not only philanthropic leaders, but also scientists from the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, from the Institute of Marine Science, and from our university. So
but Minister,
it's a very good partner for the Commonwealth.
It could be the most credible organisation in the world, but there was no tender, no oversight, no transparency, no records that we are aware of, which means we have to take your word on that. How does that meet appropriate standards of governance?
Well, a couple of things. Firstly, we have complied with the government's guidelines on grants. We have reached an extensive partnership agreement with the foundation, which is public. The Australian Audit Office will be able to follow the money, and there will continue to be close cooperation between the foundation, the federal government and the Queensland government.
Is this standard practice, though, where the government would give $400 million to an organisation without any sort of tender process or transparency around that?
Well, the first thing to say is this is the largest single investment by a government in reef preservation and conservation. And the only reason the Labor Party is raising this, Leigh, is because they abandoned the reef when they were in office. They had 5 dredge disposal projects.
Sorry to interrupt, Minister, you're not addressing my point. You're not addressing my point there, which is about the actual process. $400 million of taxpayer money going to a body without any sort of tender or transparency around that.
Well, there is a lot of transparency. There is a public agreement. As I said, the Audit Office will continue to be able to follow the money. You've got compliance with the government's guidelines. It's an organisation which the Labor Party contributed to, and it has some of Australia's leading scientists and those who are involved in philanthropic organisations. So it's a very reputable partner for the Commonwealth, but unlike any other previous grant, we're seeking to build and to leverage off our contribution, $500 million strong, from the private sector, because the reef deserves that level of support. Now, the Labor Party abandoned the reef. They had it on the endangered watch list. We've been praised for our management of the reef. This is an important contribution and should be recognised as such.
Well, you are an experienced minister. It didn't give you any pause that you were making a $400 million grant to an organisation which at the time had just 6 full-time staff without any due process? That didn't strike you as unusual, that it was just you and the Prime Minister sitting there and you handed over $400 million?
Look, my department, including my secretary, have had more than 20 meetings since early April with the foundation. And like I said, the Commonwealth, the state government of Queensland will be consulted on investment decisions. There's a very public partnership agreement. The Audit Office can be involved in following the money, and we have some of Australia's leading scientists who are expert around the reef, who are involved already with this foundation. So I really think that this is being raised as a distraction from the government's achievement in investing in the reef as opposed to anything else.
So if Labor were in power and they gave $400 million to an organisation without a tender, the coalition will just go, yep, no worries?
Well, I'll tell you what, we would welcome that sort of commitment from the Labor Party, because we never saw it when they were in office. It's only been the coalition who has put in place the $2 billion Reef 2050 plan with the Queensland Government, made this record $500 million commitment, which has been praised even by UNESCO when I recently met with their new Director General.
One final question. The recent by-elections have thrown a focus on the Turnbull government's policies. What would you like to see happen on the question of funding for Catholic schools?
Well, I believe that under the Turnbull government's plan for schools, all sectors will see an increase in their funding. That's the fact, including the Catholic sector are getting an additional $3 billion. Now, the Minister, Simon Birmingham, who's doing an excellent job, he listened to the issues around the SES and having a review of that. One was done, the results have been released, and now we're consulting on those findings.
So would you like to see a different arrangement for Catholic schools?
Well, I absolutely value the role that Catholic schools play in our sector. And let's not forget, it was the party's founder, Sir Robert Menzies, who was instrumental in ensuring proper funding for Catholic schools. So I'm sure, as the Prime Minister has indicated, he will be involved in the discussions going forward. We will reach an amicable mutual agreement. And like I said, the Coalition is contributing more than $23 billion in additional funding for our schools, and all sectors are the beneficiaries.
Minister, you've had a busy day. Thank you very much for squeezing us in at the airport this evening. We appreciate your time.
Great to be with you, Leigh.